At their wedding, they vowed to stay together till death did them part, and they kept that vow. But were other wedding vows broken before that? In some marriages, it's difficult to tell which partner is the most accomplished. This was certainly true of Michael and Kathleen Peterson of Durham, North Carolina. Michael was a decorated veteran of the Vietnam War and a best-selling author.
He wrote a book called The Immortal Dragon, which was very well done, and A Time for War, which was well done, and that book made it onto the New York Times bestseller list.
His wife, Kathleen, was a vice president at Nortel Networks, an international communications firm.
Kathleen Peterson had been worth $2.5 million on paper. A brilliant woman. She was the very first woman ever accepted into the School of Engineering at Duke University. It was an amazing accomplishment.
They each had grown children from previous marriages and lived in a luxurious 10,000 square foot home. But the Peterson storybook marriage ended on a Sunday night in December of 2001 when Michael called police at 2 a.m.
What is your emergency? My wife had an accident. She's still breathing.
What kind of accident?
She fell down the stairs. She's still breathing. Please come.
How many stairs?
No, 15, 20, I don't know. Please, get somebody here right away.
When paramedics arrived, they found Kathleen Peterson dead at the bottom of the stairs.
And we found no life signs, no pulse, no respiratory rate or effort. The cardiac monitor was showing asystole. It was really nothing left for us to do as far as life-saving.
Paramedics naturally asked Michael Peterson what happened. He said he was outside smoking his pipe by the pool, and Kathleen was upstairs working on the computer. Michael said he came inside 45 minutes later and found Kathleen unconscious at the bottom of the stairs. He thought that the combination of alcohol and her flimsy sandals most likely caused her fall.
He didn't personally witness her falling because he was at the pool area. However, she must have fallen because when he came into the home, she was already at the bottom of the stairwell.
Toxicology tests revealed Kathleen's blood alcohol level was .07.
It was below the legal limit. But she had been drinking, which adds to one's belief that the possibility of falling in such a manner exists.
And the computer forensic expert confirmed that Kathleen had been on the computer earlier that evening, just as Michael said.
The forensic guys were able to go into that hard drive and suck it right out of there, which made me realize nothing is ever gone in my computer.
But police and forensic scientists were suspicious for a number of reasons.
Deaths due to falls down the stairs are pretty uncommon, and I'd never seen a scene photograph from a fall down the stairs with that much blood.
Kathleen Peterson's death was a major news story in Durham, North Carolina, since she and her husband were well known and well liked.
I think it's a big shock because people who live in peaceful areas tend to think it can't happen here. We are protected. This is a good neighborhood. Bad things don't happen. But unfortunately, bad things happen everywhere.
Although her death appeared to be an accident, police kept all options open. investigators learned a suspicious piece of information: that Michael's 25-year-old son, Todd, was already at the scene when paramedics arrived. Suspicious because Todd Peterson didn't live at home, yet he was there at 2:30 in the morning. And investigators learned that Todd didn't like Kathleen.
Todd was obviously jealous of his stepmother. It was our understanding that he did not feel like she should be married to his father. He really liked to have the attention of his father to himself.
Michael said he called his son after he contacted paramedics. Todd, however, refused to speak to police.
He was asked several times, actually, did he want to give us a statement on what he observed and what he saw that night, and he refused to do that.
Todd acted more like a person who didn't want anybody to know anything, and Michael wasn't much better.
Then investigators noticed several inconsistencies at the scene. Paramedics said that Kathleen's blood didn't look fresh when they arrived. It had started to congeal, like it had been there for some time. And the wall by the staircase looked like it had been washed with detergent.
The smearing on the wall would suggest to even a layperson that it looked like somebody had tried to clean up some of the blood on the wall.
Even more suspicious, on top of the washed area was blood spatter. Investigators noticed another clue. There was blood on the bottom of Kathleen's feet.
It just tells you right there that at some point she had stood up, and that's how she got the blood on the bottom of her feet.
Investigators found 2 large blood drops outside on the back patio, and a blood stain on the side door of the house.
When I saw the blood drops and the blood on the door, of course you start getting red flags, and your antenna starts going up on, wondering, well, maybe this is not going to turn out the way it was called in as.
Also, Michael Peterson's story was a little confusing. He said he was with Kathleen by the pool having a drink together around 1 a.m. He said Kathleen left to go upstairs to work on the computer while he stayed outside smoking his pipe for about 45 minutes. But this was December, and Michael was wearing nothing more than shorts and a t-shirt. So investigators brought in forensic meteorologist Bill Haggard. Using data from 5 weather reporting stations, Haggard determined that the outside temperature at the Petersons' home was between 51 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 12 degrees Celsius. Haggard did not believe Peterson could comfortably sit in temperatures like that for 45 minutes.
There is a thing called the comfort zone, which is established by the Department of Energy. I would not ordinarily want to sit beside a pool in the middle of the night in shorts and a t-shirt, even under the warmer conditions.
Kathleen Peterson's autopsy revealed 7 deep lacerations on the top of her skull, inconsistent with a fall. And in Kathleen's brain tissue was a troubling clue. Doctors found red neurons, meaning they were shriveled with very little cytoplasm. Normal neurons are round with more cytoplasm.
Finding red neurons in someone's brain tissue tells you that the person had an episode of lack of oxygen at least 2 to 4 to 6 hours before they actually suffered whole body death. The conclusion is she was attacked, she was beaten, but then she lived for a long enough period of time for these red neurons to show up or develop by the time she died.
And it contradicted Michael's story that he found Kathleen's body 45 minutes after she went into the house. The medical examiner ruled Kathleen's death a homicide. Now, all eyes turned to Michael Peterson.
Kathleen was my life. I whispered her name in my heart 1,000 times. She is there, but I can't stop crying. I would never have done anything to hurt her.
But his son Todd's unusual behavior at the scene that night also raised suspicions. Investigators wondered, what was he hiding? Best-selling author Michael Peterson was now a suspect in his wife's death. While searching the Petersons' home computer, forensic experts discovered an inconsistency in Michael's story. Kathleen sent an email to her co-worker around midnight, placing her inside at the computer an hour or so earlier than Michael originally claimed. And investigators also found something unexpected. Thousands of gay pornographic images. In Michael's desk were email exchanges between Michael and a male prostitute making plans to meet for sex.
Evenings aren't great for me. I'm married, very happily married, with a dynamite wife. Yes, I know. I'm very bi, and that's all there is to it.
The emails also revealed Michael had a prior sexual relationship with another man, a local college lacrosse player. Was it possible that Kathleen discovered these materials while using the computer on the night of her murder?
It was, to me, disturbing, and certainly I believe that it would have been disturbing to his wife to see.
Investigators looked into the Petersons' finances, and that, too, was revealing. Surprisingly, Michael hadn't generated any income in more than 2 years.
Kathleen was supporting the entire household with her income from Nortel. That would include all the children, their educational expenses, as well as the expenses of running a household of that size.
With 3 girls in college, their credit card debt soared to $143,000. And Michael's 2 grown sons were asking for financial support as well. Kathleen's Nortel stock at one time was worth $2.5 million. But because of a drop in the stock price, it was now worth less than $50,000. And perhaps most revealing of all, Michael was the beneficiary of Kathleen's $2 million life insurance policy.
Money and sex is the oldest motives you can ever find, and Michael Peterson had one of each.
While all this provided motive, it wasn't evidence of murder. So investigators analyzed the clothing Michael was wearing on the night of his wife's death. They found watermarks on the front of Michael's shorts that looked like he had tried to remove some of the blood. So what did blood spatter expert Dwayne Deaver do? His experience and training prompted him to look between the legs of Michael's shorts. That's where he found blood spatter.
That is something that I see many times in beating cases, because generally when you're standing over a victim and you're beating them, a lot of the impact spatter will come directly back on the individual and will go into the crotch area of their pants.
Using a blood-soaked sponge and dressed in similar clothing, Deaver attempted to simulate the position the killer would need to be in to create the same type of blood spatter. The test results matched Michael Peterson's shorts.
The individual wearing those shorts had most likely been standing over someone as they beat them, allowing the blood to come up through the opening in the legs.
Forensic experts say this couldn't have resulted from handling Kathleen's body after her death. And it was clear that the bloody shoe print found on the back of Kathleen's pants, matching Michael's shoes, was a result of the beating.
The shoe track was another one of those aha moments. He had blood on the bottom of his feet, and he steps on the back of her while she's face down.
It would seem for someone to do that to their spouse that they were probably in some type of a rage and could not control their behavior.
Since there was no blood spatter found on Todd Peterson's clothes, prosecutors do not believe he had anything to do with the murder. Just as the forensic experts were concluding their investigation, they uncovered one final piece of evidence against Michael Peterson. 16 years earlier, when Michael and his first wife were living in Germany, their close friend, Liz Ratliff, a widow, was found dead at the bottom of a flight of stairs.
It gave me chills. It was just incredible that two of these could be so similar.
You looked at Kathleen Peterson and looked at Liz Ratliff. They could pass for sisters.
Michael was the last person to see Liz Ratliff alive. She was a wealthy woman, and she named Michael in her will.
Ms. Ratliff left Michael Peterson in charge of her children, as well as in charge of all of her personal property in the event that she died, which of course did happen.
Originally, her death was ruled an accident, but officials exhumed Liz Ratliff's body to conduct a new autopsy. Dr. Radish found lacerations on Mrs. Ratliff's head, 7 of them, just like Kathleen Peterson.
Her death, it's not as a result of a fall down the stairs, and my conclusion and my opinion is that she was also beaten.
Lightning doesn't strike in the same place twice. It just simply doesn't happen.
I would never have done anything to hurt her. I am innocent of these charges, and we will prove it in court.
In the death of Kathleen Peterson, there was an enormous amount of forensic evidence, all pointing to Michael Peterson as the killer. The murder weapon was never found, but the lacerations on Kathleen's skull indicated it was narrow and slightly rounded. In some family pictures, investigators saw an instrument known as a blowpipe in front of the Petersons' fireplace. But after Kathleen's death, it was no longer there or anywhere else in the house.
I'll be honest with you, I do very, very thorough searches. We searched the entire premises of that house very thoroughly on 2 different occasions.
Well, you don't always have the luxury of finding the murder weapon in every case, just like in a lot of cases you don't have the luxury of having DNA.
Prosecutors believe Kathleen's murder took place several hours before Michael called 911. Around midnight, Kathleen went upstairs to use her husband's computer to check her business email. She seldom did this, but had left her own computer laptop at work. And prosecutors think Kathleen found the emails in Michael's desk drawer detailing a homosexual tryst he had planned with a male prostitute. She also may have found the gay pornographic images. The evidence suggests Kathleen went downstairs and confronted Michael, the man she was supporting financially, and he exploded. Kathleen probably turned to go back upstairs when Michael picked up the blowpipe by the fireplace and beat her over the head, stepping on her back and leaving his shoe print. As she lay unconscious, Michael removed his shoes so he wouldn't track blood throughout the house, and for the next couple of hours attempted to stage the scene. He put Kathleen's sandals near her body, tried to wash the blood from the wall, and then realized Kathleen wasn't dead. She stood up and got blood on the bottom of her feet. Michael struck her again, producing the blood spatter on the inseam of his shorts and near the top of the wall he had just cleaned. Her brain cells died from lack of oxygen long before she expired. Proof she lay bleeding on the floor for hours. Someone, no one knows who, took the blowpipe out the back door, dropping blood on the slate walkway. And Michael tried to remove some of the blood from his clothes before calling 911.
He may not know what blood spatter is, but he knew that these little spots on the front of his pants were probably not good. And so he poured the water on there to get rid of these things, but yet he couldn't see what was in the crotch and on the back of his pants.
I would never have done anything to hurt her.
Despite his repeated denials, Michael Peterson went on trial for his wife's murder. The verdict was as expected.
State of North Carolina versus Michael Ivor Peterson. We, the 12 members of the jury, unanimously find the defendant to be guilty of first-degree murder.
He felt like he could outsmart just about anybody. Maybe that had to do with his personality, maybe his chosen occupation. But he did try to outsmart people in Germany, and he tried to outsmart people here in Durham. He tried to outsmart the jury, actually, but it simply didn't work.
Peterson was sentenced to life in prison. Prosecutors say he'd gotten away with murder 16 years earlier in Germany, but better scientific analysis prevented him from getting away with it a second time.
I got the right person. I'm convinced that he killed his wife, and I'm convinced that he killed Elizabeth Ratliff.
The forensics back that decision 100%. The forensic evidence in this case was written in Kathleen Peterson's blood. And the people that processed that scene did the job that needed to be done to put a guilty person behind bars.
I guess the biggest smoking gun in this case would be the red neurons. Neuropathologists and pathologists recognize the significance of that.
He was a fictional writer, and he knew how to compose a fictional plot. And I believe that in regards to Kathleen's death, that's exactly what he did. He tried to portray her death as something that was fiction instead of fact.